You know, I think the framework we're dealing with, we're a city of 300,000. We've got about 1 in 7 homes as of first of the year in foreclosure. We have unemployment rate of over 14%. And yet we are doing more exciting things now than we ever have in the history of Riverside. So give you a little framework on, I think we just got lucky in Riverside. Some of the things that even drove me to come to Riverside. I was born and raised in Riverside. Our leader, Brad Hudson, actually worked with me when I was at the County of Riverside. And he was one of those department heads that was a pain in my ass. You know, he never listened to what I wanted to do, always wanted to be 3 steps ahead of IT, but I just stood my ground. And when I left the county and decided to venture off in the private sector, and then Brad became the city manager of Riverside, I said, now there's a guy that is going to make some fundamental change. He is going to make something happen. And 2 months after he got that job, he called me up and said, Steve, we need to have lunch. He said, I understand your quality of life isn't all you'd expect it to be. How would you like to work in Riverside? And I said, you know, I'd like to do that. And we talked a little bit about it. And it's a little unique in Riverside because our IT organization is outsourced. Never had run an IT organization. It's completely outsourced. Wasn't really sure if that was really a good thing. Maybe we'd change that. But one of the fundamental things that Brad did was he looked at Riverside and he said, you know, this city just needs a change, needs a facelift. And he convinced our elected body to assess a property tax that over 30 years on every parcel in Riverside, that they would do all the necessary improvements, parks, expansion of roads, revitalizing our downtown, and do it in 5 years. So they got a $1.5 billion approval 2 years ago to fundamentally change the city of Riverside. So dumb luck, because here we are in the worst economy that we've seen in our generation, and yet we have more money now, more projects, more development, hiring more local companies locally. We're helping this down economy. So that's one of the fundamental changes. But when John asked me to be here, you know, he said, Steve, what I'd like to try to hear about is, you know, not necessarily what's not working, but what are you changing from a technology perspective? Because I think, as we all know, elected officials, for the most part, unless you're lucky, don't get technology. And in my particular case, Brad Hudson is excellent at redevelopment, but he doesn't understand technology, so he just said, Steve, I trust you, run with it and run the ball with it. So fundamentally what we learned with the electeds and with our management team was the only thing they recognize from technology, it's what's on their PDA, what's on their desktop, what's in their home, and what's on the web. So we focus primarily on those aspects, because if we're doing that well, then IT is running well for the city. Everything else it almost doesn't matter. It's all in the back end. They don't even understand anything in the back end. So when we were going through these difficult times, as you can imagine, with the economy, with unemployment, a lot of foreclosed, vacant homes, our sales tax tanked. And as a result of that, the city of Riverside said, we have to make serious cuts, but we're going to make them soon. So last June, we did all our cuts, knowing that sales tax was going to decline, that property values are coming, and in September is going to be another huge hit for cities and the counties as a result of the rolls from the property tax, and then everything with the state going on. I mean, it's all coming down. It is going to be the worst time for city and county government that we've seen in our working lifetimes. So what we did is we actually had all general fund departments make up to a 40% cut in staff across the board last June. It was very painful. It hurts. It's one of those things that it wasn't one of those things you whine about. It's just you roll up your sleeve and you figure out how you're going to do it. Now, one of the things we did from a technology perspective, the things that we focused on, is I was very fortunate that when I first got there, we made some fundamental change to some of our contracts. We eliminated some maintenance. We did some major technology refresh. So now we're in an economy that we're not going to see technology refresh for a couple of years. You know, we did virtualization. We gained those benefits, and thank goodness we did. I think some of the things we're thinking about, you know, I was sitting in the VDI demonstration. I mean, definitely virtualization of the desktop, when you don't have a technology replacement fund, is something that's got to happen, something we're definitely going to look at, probably end up implementing by the end of the year. I think you start looking at some of the cloud computing models. You know, we're definitely looking at hosted exchange. It pans out financially, but when it comes down to the credibility with your elected officials and your department head, and it's got to have, in their minds, 100% uptime, I'm very concerned about cloud computing. There's just, you're introducing so many more variables there. Can you deal with 3 nines of reliability, which is what those contracts are, or less? We try to do better than that in IT. So those are some concerns I have on cloud computing, but definitely I think it's something that we as IT professionals are going to have to look at. Some other fundamental changes that we did, at the end of the day, the elected official has to have a win. The citizen has to feel like, what is IT doing for me? And they don't know anything about what technology goes on. We're real fortunate at Riverside. We actually had our mayor start a nonprofit. We call it Smart Riverside. And what Smart Riverside is, it's kind of an economic development agent to attract and retain high-tech companies, but there is a citizen component to that. And the citizen component is that we're the largest e-waste collector in the region. We went out to an RFP and we deployed citywide wireless across our city. So now all of our citizens have free wireless up to 512K. When we rolled out that program, we introduced a digital inclusion program, which is now self-sustained. We had to kick in dollars for the next 2 years, but as one of our cuts in our budget, we had to transfer that as a self-sufficient fund, which it is now, and we have, I can talk about the revenue generation sources there, but the bottom line is we've benefited over 3,000 families with refurbished PCs, free internet access, a wireless access device, and Microsoft Office software on their PCs. I tell you, the elected officials get more positive press than anything I do in the back end in IT. So fundamentally, that's been a big win for IT in Riverside. So now the struggle is on the back end. How do you keep the back end running with fewer staff? And the outsource model that we did, and I think what really made it a win, is we changed the contract to a cost-plus model, which enabled me as a CIO to fundamentally reduce to the levels of staff that I wanted, pay people more but have fewer staff, and that's been our model, and we've been able to adjust that. So as a result of even having to do up to 40% reductions, a lot of us are working a lot harder, but we're compensated well, we work hard, and I think at the end of the day, things are going well. Some of the things we're focused on over the next 12 months, in addition to what I mentioned, power management, I think from the green perspective, no-brainer. Broadband stimulus dollars, definitely focused on it. We've worked with our utility to create rebate programs for power management and also with solid-state storage. So any private sector or government entity in Riverside that introduces those technologies, we will have dollars for those rebate programs and do it as part of our nonprofit to make it an economic development benefit as well. So those are just some of the fundamental things I'm doing. I kind of agree in talking to John that this is an opportunity to make changes, and in some cases those changes that needed to happen for a long time. Right now when I look at my budget and I can see the decreases at LA, it's painful. Right now when I look at my budget, I only have staff and maintenance. So my discretionary dollars next year are just reducing my maintenance costs. So my focus next year is what can I do with fewer products, consolidate in cloud computing.